got a call from one Colonel Lodbrok, Wutai emissary. He was trying to track down the identity of the composer of his theme. The song in question? Well, it sounds like this. Yeah, it's a big brouhaha of a track full of bravado, big egos, and bigger guitar licks. The problem is that track comes from the slot machine simulator known as Final Fantasy VII Ever Crisis, and Square Enix hasn't released an official soundtrack for that quote-unquote game. Motifs from Mr. Lodbrok's theme show up in Final Fantasy VII Rebirth inside a subdued, ominous arrangement of a different track altogether. But that track didn't make it onto the Rebirth soundtrack either, so it's impossible to know for sure who composed the theme in question. Impossible, the man claimed. Clearly, he's not used to working with a true professional like myself. The name's Inspector RK. I'm the record keeper of who wrote what, and I promise you, we're getting to the bottom of this mystery. Call came in at 8:15 last night from a Mr. Lodbrok, ambassador to Wutai. Said he was trying to track down the identity of his theme's composer. Told him I don't do missing persons and mistaken identity cases anymore, but hell, the sack of gill he left me at the table didn't lie. Alright, easy enough I figured, but there's a catch. See, this Ever Crisis here's got itself one big barn burner of a soundtrack. We're talking over 100 tracks and more than a dozen composers attached to this bona fide slot machine simulator. The man chuckled as he left my office. Felt like there was more to the guy than met the eye, but he was gone before I could ask him anything more. Poured myself a cup of joe, borrowed my grandson's iPhone, and got to work. First things first. The credits to Ever Crisis divide its arrangers and composers by category. We've got the arrangers of the original Final Fantasy VII, Crisis Core Final Fantasy VII, Final Fantasy VII Remake, Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, and finally, the new Final Fantasy VII Ever Crisis compositions. That last one's where Mr. Lodbrok's theme appears, so we can eliminate all the composers not included in this shorter list. That leaves us with 8 names. Junya Nakano, Tadayoshi Makino, Ryo Uratani, Keiki Kobayashi, Asaya Tsunemoto, Ryo Furukawa, Shotaro Shima, and Shingo Kataoka. More suspects than I'd like, but hey, gotta start somewhere. My next step was cross-referencing these 8 suspects with the list of composers in the big boy video game Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, where Mr. Lodbrok's theme also shows up. But since that track in question didn't make it onto the game's official soundtrack release, I knew the liner notes wouldn't paint the whole story. Had to go deeper. Spent the weekend playing 80 hours of the Frog Simulator game to get a better look at the game's credits. Got some key freeze frames of the game's full list of composers. Now I could start to see what the bigwigs at Squaresoft were trying to hide from me. Comparing the Ever Crisis composers to the Rebirth composers allowed me to eliminate my first suspect. Even though he did some fantastic work on Final Fantasy X, Mr. Junya Nakano did not, in fact, work on Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. So we're down to 7 suspects. Lucky for me, 7's my favorite number. I felt confident cutting Mr. Shotaro Shima and Mr. Ryo Furukawa from the list as well. For additional research, I caught up on this mind-numbingly dull series of Final Fantasy VII Rebirth music analysis videos on the internet. If nothing else, it's gotten me to the point where I've gotten a pretty good ear for what is or isn't a Mr. Shima composition. And let me tell you, that Shima? Nah, he's not our guy. Nor does it sound one iota like Mr. Furukawa's acrobatic, rousing orchestral style. And just like that, we're down to 5 suspects. Mr. Shingo Kataoka ain't it either. The man's oddball arrangements are way too quirky and playful for Mr. Lodbrok's gung-ho, rah-rah theme. He's definitely off the list. I was ready to write off Mr. Reo Uratani as well, since his Rebirth tracks are much too restrained and elegant to sound anything like my client's theme. But then I took a listen to some of his music outside of Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. His compositions for the game Hi-Fi Rush paint a different picture. Here's a man comfortable with a more straightforward rock arrangement. Could this be our guy? Nah, those Hi-Fi Rush tracks still lack some of the playful obnoxiousness in my client's theme. Not enough big himbo energy in these compositions. Shame. If only Mr. Uratani had spent more time working on Street Fighter titles during his time at Capcom, we'd maybe have ourselves a smoking gun. Wait. Street Fighter? No, never mind. Mr. Tadayoshi Makino shares Mr. Uratani's fondness for gruff, electric guitar tones, but his Rebirth tracks are all much too gloomy and dark to fit the bill. Doesn't line up with the mystery composer's MO. Yeah, my gut's telling me neither of these gentlemen's the perp, but I'll leave them on the list for now. They're not out of the woods just yet. 2 suspects left to cover, neither of which the dingus YouTuber bothered to mention even once across the 16 episodes of his series. Yeah, thanks for nothing, kid. I think it's time for a road trip. .23 in the afternoon. Caught a train heading for Shinra HQ. Knew I needed to get topside to get some more answers. Next suspect was one Mr. Keiki Kobayashi. You might remember him for his rousing boss battle track against one of those prototype flying machine doodads back in Final Fantasy VII Remake. But beyond that, not a whole lot to go on. Decided I'd see if I could squeeze someone from Shinra's weapons division, see if I could get a closer look at one of those Valkyrie prototypes. Figured I might be able to get a clearer picture if I got up close. Snuck into their swanky cafeteria and started asking around. Completely fruitless. Tell you what, that director of advanced weaponry must run one tight ship. Everyone seems terrified of her. But on the contrary, the nerds in the space and aeronautics department needed a little prodding to start yapping. Seems I'd hit the jackpot.
Yeah, I know Kobayashi.
The man spilled information freely. Told me his boss, Director Palmer, was out of town on some top secret mission, so he was feeling particularly relaxed.
Moved over to weapons with that Valkyrie track he made a few years back. Seemed like a natural fit for him, but if you ask me, his heart still belongs to aeronautics.
What makes you say that?
Ever heard of Ace Combat? It's a long-running combat flight simulation video game series. Mr. Kobayashi, well, Ace Combat was his baby. He was lead composer on several of those. Ace Combat 4, 5, 6, 7, really you name it.
Sorry, did you just say 7? That's my favorite number. I paid for the man's drink then left HQ. That's all I needed to get from here. Went to the local mom-and-pop game store and picked up a used copy of Ace Combat 7. Took the game home, cranked the volume and started playing. By midnight, I knew all you could ever want to know about Ace Combat 7 and Mr. Kobayashi's writing style. The man's got range, I'll give him that. Whole lot of twangy bluegrass guitar, serene synth pads, and of course a whole slew of big bombastic orchestral tracks that sound a whole lot like his remake track, The Valkyrie. Tracks like Gunther Bay and Rescue show me a man comfortable blending hard rock and symphonic. Chugging guitars, synth lines. Yeah, there's something to this. I think we've got ourselves a front runner. But best not to count your Choco Chicks before they all hatch. We've still got one last suspect to look into. After an evening of sleuthing around Wall Market, I caught wind of Mr. Masaya Tsunemoto having been last seen gallivanting somewhere in the Karel Desert. Caught the last ferry ride out of Junon bound for Costa del Sol. Killed time aboard by catching up with the latest episode of the YouTuber's Rebirth music analysis series. If this man could stop talking about Shima this or Shima that for 1 second, he might have been able to reach Chapter 8 by now and save me this trip across the ocean. Bah, at least the drinks are cheaper here than back at the Honeybee Inn. Once we landed in Costa del Sol, I made a beeline for Corel. It was my first time getting to visit the Big Sauce, as we like to say, so I grabbed a few souvenirs for the road. Also met an overstuffed Moogle that seemed plenty eager to read my fortune. Not interested, I told him, but he wouldn't take no for an answer. Fine. Decided to humor the overstuffed robot, but immediately wished I hadn't. He spat out a piece of paper. Grave misfortune, it read, followed by some sort of poem. An island left within your wake calls back to you for your own sake. A soaring tune that's full and clear. Before it starts to disappear, have you perhaps made some mistake? The hell does that mean? I asked, but when I looked up, the Moogle was gone. Shoved this so-called fortune into my coat pocket and continued on my way. Even though Mr. Tsunemoto was nowhere to be found in Gold Saucer, North Corel, or the Corel prison, I at least got a good taste of his Rebirth sound as I traipsed around this lousy dust bowl. Yeah, I found a good half-dozen varied arrangements of various character themes, a handful of Barrett tracks, a Yuffie, a Red 13, and I hate to say it, but none of them sound like my client's theme. The only thing that came close was his take on the Desert Wasteland, whose crunchy bass guitar and electric lead had a certain swagger to him that reminded me of my client's cocky mug. I know. It's not a whole lot to go on. I was about to scratch his name off the list when it struck me. Something wasn't adding up. Those Tsunemoto tracks, those are all just arrangements of old songs from the 1990s. They're cold cases, all of them. Yet the suspect's name was right there in the list of Rebirth's composers, meaning there's at least one mystery Mr. Tsunemoto composition hiding somewhere in Rebirth. Could it be my client's theme? I felt it was too early to say. All of his arrangements of Uematsu character themes didn't tell me one lick of what his actual compositions sound like. Had to keep digging. Folks out in the sandpit kept pretty tight-lipped, but I was able to glean a few nuggets of wisdom. We have to rewind the clock a couple decades to find some examples of Mr. Tsunemoto's original compositions. Working at Tosei, he's credited with co-composing the score of the PlayStation 2 video game spin-off of The Nightmare Before Christmas called Tim Burton's The Nightmare Before Christmas Oogie's Revenge. But the majority of that score is just arrangements of musical numbers lifted right from the movie, while the other half are slavishly trying to emulate the feel of Danny Elfman's original score. It didn't tell me nothing about Mr. Tsunemoto's actual compositional style. Or so I thought. His only other notable composer credit is for Tosei's Ultimate Ghosts and Goblins for the PlayStation Portable, which feels just as campy and spooky as the Nightmare Before Christmas score. Maybe this is just what he sounds like then. Or at least what he sounded like over 20 years ago. I know from experience, people can change if you give them time. I don't want to write off Mr. Tsunemoto from my list just because of 2 games Capcom published a lifetime ago. Wait. Capcom. I'm getting too old for this. I needed a drink, fast. So I made my way to the local drinking hole, the Bail Jumper. But everything on tap looked like piss, so I opted for a coffee instead. Black as a moonless night. Parked myself at the bar and decided to gather my thoughts. Between Mr. Tsunemoto's mystery composition and the high-energy rock and roll of Mr. Kobayashi's Ace Combat compositions, I started thinking the evidence against Mr. Reo Uratani and Mr. Tadayoshi Makino was beginning to seem pretty flimsy. Yeah, I think those 2 are off the list. They can join the Nakano, Shima, Furukawa, and Kataoka in the rejects pile. so I was down to 2. But still, something seemed wrong. Had I made some mistake? I began to pull out the cryptic fortune I'd received earlier when suddenly I was interrupted by the sound of gunshots and a roaring engine. Looked like some hooligans were trying to break out of here. But hang on a minute. Did you hear that? That rocking guitar? That high energy? That big free-spirited nature? The funky breakdown? Now that's a track my client could get behind. I dashed out of the bar, knocking my mug of coffee on the way out. "Sorry," I yelled back in a hurry. "Put it on my tab. Fortune awaits."
Yes. Yes, sir. Precisely. He completely fell for it. No, he hasn't made that connection yet. He should be off his tail for good now. Yes. Of course. And if he ever does catch on, we can lure him back with the harmony of sound. Yes. Very well. Whatever you say, Colonel.
Last I left things, I was chasing Avalanche through the Corel Desert, hot on the tail of a particularly juicy lead. You hear that? That's the track Prison Break, and it's got that similar rock and or roll high energy bluster of my client's theme, that's for sure. This track was composed by Mr. Keiki Kobayashi, a man who was already one of my top 2 suspects thanks to the evocative, gung-ho swagger of his Ace Combat series compositions. But this track here? Yeah, I think this just about seals the deal. I lost track of Avalanche and their red buggy in the sand waves, but frankly, I had all I needed. It was time to start the long trip back to Midgar. Took a helicopter from Gold Saucer to Costa del Sol to catch my return trip home aboard the Shinra 8. Called Mr. Lodbrok from a beachside payphone as I waited to board. Told him to meet me at my office in a day's time. He seemed plenty eager to hear what I had to say. Maybe even too eager. Ominous clouds started rumbling on the horizon as the Shinra 8 started its journey east across the ocean. We were halfway to Junon when the big sea started to overwhelm us. We braced, but not hard enough. The storm sent me flying. I was out cold before I even hit the waves. I remember waking up alone on an island. No, that wasn't true. There was a boy there too.
Greetings. Funny seeing you here.
Where am I?
Welcome to the Rador Archipelago. This is, or at least was, a beautiful place home to varied fauna and flora and wonderfully diverse cultures.
The Rador Archipelago?
Do you hear that?
I followed the boy's gaze skyward, where a large condor blotted out the sun. The creature cried out a beautiful song. A song so loud, so powerful, so familiar.
It seems to be getting dark,
said the boy. Indeed it is, I responded, entranced.
Do not forget what you've come to find.
What I've come to find? You mean Mr. Lodbrok's theme? But I found that. Mr. Keiki Kobayashi wrote it. Didn't he?
Didn't he? Well, you know what they say. 03-3.25.
By now, the shadow cast by the condor had grown so large, so dark that I could barely see the boy, nor the place where he stood. I tried stepping forward, reaching out toward him, but stepped onto nothing and began to fall. My eyes adjusted to the light, my body to the rocking motion, and my ears to the crashing waves. The strange vision of a boy and an island and a condor vanished in an instant, as ephemeral as sand coursing through fingers. I was awake again. Better yet, I was alive and still aboard the Shinra 8 that had withstood the storm.
Are you okay, sir? You took a real tumble in the middle of the storm.
I slowly stood up and saw Junon on the horizon, illuminated with a golden sky. Within the day I was back in Midgar. Mr. Lodbrok was likely already at my office waiting for me. But as I approached the building, something caught my eye. There were 3 big, burly, unknown men waiting for me at the door. Strange. None of these men looked anything like Mr. Lodbrok. They hadn't spotted me yet, so I went around back and entered via the fire escape. I approached the entrance from the inside and stuck my ear to the door, see if I could figure out what these oafs wanted.
Boss said he should be home by now. What gives?
Quit your worrying. I'm sure he'll be here any minute.
He better. I'm aching for some bones to crush.
Whoa, hold your adamantoise, brother. Remember what Boss said. If he's a gullible chump who still thinks it's Kobayashi, we don't lift a finger. Let him have his moment in the sun. But remember, if he starts sniffing around, looking into you-know-who, well, that's when we can have ourselves a little party. That's right. Boy, am I looking forward to this.
My head was spinning. I wasn't sure who sent these goons, but if what they said was even remotely true, then I was missing something damn important. Suddenly, I remembered the strange fortune I'd received back in Gold Saucer. An island left within your wake calls back to you for your own sake. A soaring tune that's full and clear before it starts to disappear. Have you perhaps made some mistake? I needed to go back to the drawing board. Home wasn't safe anymore, so I packed a few supplies, then went back out through the fire escape. Took a train topside and made my way back to Shinra HQ. Greased a few elbows and was able to gain access to their classified archives. There was something I needed to look into. Found a dossier about Project Zero soldiers and their highly classified assignment on the Rador Archipelago. The leader of that mission was none other than my client, Mr. Glenn Lodbrok. He'd mentioned to me in passing having a history with Shinra, but this was something else. Before his time as a Project Zero soldier, Mr. Lodbrok was just a regular soldier candidate, and while most of that information had been redacted out of the archives, I could still tease out something big. The man had lied to me. Here I was thinking Mr. Lodbrok was from Final Fantasy VII Ever Crisis, but his existence predates that game. You're looking at archival footage of Mr. Lodbrok in the long-dead Battle Royale mobile game Final Fantasy VII The First Soldier. Not to be confused with Mr. Lodbrok's narrative arc in Ever Crisis, also called The First Soldier. Keep up, will ya? And I know what you're thinking. Sure, Mr. Lodbrok might have shown up in The First Soldier, but his theme is from Ever Crisis, so who cares about this older First Soldier game? I care, because both The First Soldier and Ever Crisis were announced at the same time on the same day in 2021, and while these two titles were made by different developers, our overlords at Square Enix likely had equally ambitious plans for both projects. But as any history book worth its salt will teach you, attempting to compete with Fortnite is a fool's errand, while on the flip side, adding swimsuits to a gacha game with Tifa in it will literally print money forever.
Okay. Okay. So that's that. That's that, you know? What are we talking about again?
So it goes, and so it was, that The First Soldier was nearly dead on arrival, while Ever Crisis continues to be a resounding moneymaker for Square Enix. And so it is possible that many of The First Soldier's narrative ideas might have been scrapped and could very well have made their way into Ever Crisis. On January 11th, 2023, the first soldier died so that Ever Crisis, 8 months later, could live. We had gotten a glimpse at Mr. Lodbrok in the opening cutscene of the first soldier, and while that wasn't much, it was a taste, which supplants him as an original character not from Ever Crisis but from the first soldier, which raises the following question. Had the first soldier lived on for another year or so, would we have first heard Mr. Lodbrok's theme there instead? Was Mr. Lodbrok's theme written for Ever Crisis or for the first soldier? These are impossible questions to answer concretely, but I knew I had to take a closer look at the composer credits for The First Soldier. Unlike Ever Crisis, The First Soldier did get an official soundtrack release, and while Mr. Nobuo Uematsu and Mr. Mitsuto Suzuki share a few composer credits, this score is predominantly the work of Mr. Shotaro Shima and Mr. Ryo Furukawa, both of whom also contributed to Ever Crisis and were among our list of 8 suspects. But I thought I'd eliminated those two. Too much gusto for Mr. Furukawa, too much bravado for Mr. Shima. But seeing their names listed right here and no one else, it shook me. These two are the only composers who worked on Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, Final Fantasy VII Ever Crisis, and Final Fantasy VII The First Soldier. Was I wrong to have dismissed these two so quickly? And then, suddenly, it hit me like a chocobo going 80 clicks on a freeway. While reviewing the end credits to Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, I spotted something I'd missed the last time. Original music composed by Takeharu Ishimoto and Hibiki Yamazaki. Mr. Takeharu Ishimoto, that's the Crisis Core Final Fantasy VII composer, so it makes sense he would be credited here since his music shows up in Chapter 9 of Rebirth. But who the hell is this other guy? I decided to double-check the Ever Crisis credits while I was at it, and to my surprise, what do I see? Final Fantasy VII The First Soldier original composer, Hibiki Yamazaki. What in hell is this about? This man who isn't even listed in the official soundtrack to The First Soldier. All this time. Could this be our answer? I scoured a few other aisles of the archives, searching for some reason. Eventually came across Mr. Hibiki Yamazaki's file, where I discovered that he is, or at least was, an employee of the music production company Otonowa, from which he provided his services on such titles as Bayonetta 3 and, of course, Final Fantasy VII The First Soldier. I learned Japanese at the tender age of 1, so I can tell you that Otonowa means the harmony of sound. The harmony of sound, eh? Chasing the lead upstream led me to another epiphany. The president and founder of Otonowa is none other than Mr. Ryo Furukawa. Funny, I can't seem to get away from this guy. Interesting. But it doesn't explain why Mr. Yamazaki would be credited in such a unique way in Ever Crisis and Rebirth's credits. Just what exactly was his role on these games? I could hear security making their way to me in the archives, so I snuck out through a bathroom vent and made my way to Sector 3. Went to an internet cafe and did some rawing. That's what they call Googling out here. Rawing, short for Shinrawing, since Shinra owns everything. They even make their own phones. Anyhow, after a bit of sleuthing, I found out 2 things. The first, this Yamazaki's one hell of a cook. He's got himself a cooking channel on YouTube.
ようこそ。はい、これ煮卵ちゃんね。ネギ散らして。急いで。時間と勝負。弁が伸びます。
Fascinating. Next, I found Mr. Yamazaki's Twitter account, and with it, old tweets pointing back to his First Soldier compositions. 3 of them in particular.
all slight and seasonal, which might explain why none of them made it onto the official soundtrack. He might simply have composed these after the official soundtrack had been released, hence the omission. And yet, Mr. Yamazaki's name shows up in the Rebirth credits of all places. Why would it show up there, and in such a prominent way? Unless there was another reason his name showed up in the Rebirth credits. I leaned back, closed my eyes, and thought back to my lengthy playthrough of Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. The synapses-strewn mental Rolodex began to spin back at blistering speeds. I recalled my entire playthrough, each scene playing back in rapid succession. Each scene and each track. The answer was here. It had to be. Wait. But, of course. Before I can ponder the revelation a moment longer, I feel a heavy hand on my right shoulder.
Enjoying yourself?
I turned around to see the same 3 goons who were camped out in front of my office just earlier.
Couldn't help yourself to a little snooping, huh?
I feel something pressed up against my back.
And to think it was going so well.
I attempt to defuse the situation. Listen, gentlemen, I think we can come to a reasonable... But before I can finish my sentence, I feel a bag go over my head and the biting pain of a swift hit to the back of my skull.
Yeah, that's enough snooping for one day. Besides, there's someone who wants to see you.
I sense the men begin to pull me up and off the chair as I drift into unconsciousness. I didn't know where they were taking me, but I was ready. I knew who composed Mr. Glenn Lodbrok's theme. I awoke to blackness and the roaring sound of whirring helicopter blades. I was still tied and blindfolded, but I could tell we were moving fast. A voice called out,
Rise and shine, little man.
Suddenly, the blindfold gets pulled from my head, revealing the piercing light of day. I winced, my eyes slow to adjust to the staggering brightness. Where are you taking me? I barked. The goons chuckled to themselves, declining to answer my query.
You'll see soon enough. We're just about there.
I sense a sinking feeling in my stomach as the helicopter begins to descend.
That's close enough.
One of the goons calls out to the pilot. The door next to me slides open, revealing the ocean's blue on the horizon. Closer still, a small outcropping of land, roughly the size of all of Wall Market. I know this place. It's the island from my dream. Before I can take in another moment of the view, I feel 2 of the goons grab me by the collar and waist.
Now off you go.
Now wait a minute, gentlemen.
Have a nice trip. See you next fall.
With my arms still bound, I'm incapable of stopping them from tossing me outside the helicopter door. I fall. Far enough for it to hurt, but to my surprise, not to kill. We were closer to the ground than I'd expected. I land in a smooth patch of grass that breaks the worst of the fall. Hello again, Inspector. I turned my body towards a familiar-sounding voice. Him. It was that scientist from Shinra's aeronautics department. Was he in on this too?
Welcome to the Rador Archipelago.
The Rador Archipelago? That's impossible. I'm fully caught up on the Ever Crisis The First Soldier storyline. I know the archipelago sank.
Ha! I can see you've done your homework. I knew we could count on you to be thorough. But alas, this is the last remaining island of the Rador Archipelago. We're glad you could make it.
I soon noticed we weren't alone. Standing within earshot of the scientist was a man dressed head to toe in black. It was my client. His face was partially obscured by a black hood. I'd appreciate it if I could talk to my client directly, I told the man. Not sure I see the need for an intermediary such as yourself.
I then spoke past the scientist, hoping to discuss things directly with my client. Do you mind filling me in on what exactly is going on? But he said nothing.
You know why you're here, Inspector. You're here to tell us exactly who composed Colonel Lodbrok's theme.
Why bring me here of all places? Couldn't we talk this out back home? The question was mostly rhetorical. I was beginning to put two and two together. The reason they brought me out here in the middle of nowhere is so that they can deal with their mess if they're not happy with the answer I'm about to give them. From the ease at which the scientist had given me information back at HQ,
Yeah, I know Kobayashi.
to the little bits I'd overheard of those goons outside my office,
Remember what Boss said. If he's a gullible chump who still thinks it's Kobayashi, we don't lift a finger.
it was clear who they wanted me to tell them was the composer. But why? Why go through all this effort to set that man up? Worse yet, why set me up? Why does the Colonel so badly want me to take the bait? All right, fine, I said. If they want me to fall for their bait, so be it. Thing is, they're expecting an easy catch, like a blue goo. Little do they know, I might as well be the terror of the deep. Fine, I'll tell you who wrote Mr. Glenn Lodbrok's theme.
Ha! Bring it on.
Let's start from the beginning, shall we? From the get-go, I had more suspects than I'd like. Eliminating Mr. Junya Nakano was the easiest, since he wasn't credited in Rebirth, only in Ever Crisis. Since Mr. Lodbrok's theme shows up in Rebirth, Mr. Nakano's name would have to be there too if he had been the composer.
Objection! How naive of you to assume his omission from Rebirth's credits would be grounds to eliminate Mr. Nakano. Mr. Patrick Rainville's wonderful long-form series analyzing each piece of music from Final Fantasy VII Rebirth has shown that some names, such as Daiki Ishikawa and Takafumi Imamura, were omitted from the Rebirth credits even though the various VR combat simulator tracks and Hip Hop the Chocobo, among many others, made it into Rebirth. Had you spent less time maligning his YouTube series and instead focused on what Mr. Rainville was actually saying, you would know Nakano's purported omission from the Rebirth credits means nothing.
Hold it! That's a false comparison. Mr. Ishikawa's compositions you listed above were written for Remake, not Rebirth. His omission from the Rebirth credits can be chalked up to an internal decision not to credit musicians who didn't contribute anything new to Rebirth.
That seems like a scummy decision.
I agree, and besides, even if Mr. Nakano's name had been included in the Rebirth credits, it would take no time at all to dismiss him from the case at hand. Mr. Nakano's style is largely atmospheric, with many droning and layered textures. He's a fantastic composer in his own right, but there is no way he would have written Mr. Lodbrok's theme. Next, I eliminated Mr. Ryo Furukawa and Mr. Shotaro Shima, since I couldn't find a single song in their discographies with half of the gusto, bravado, and rock and roll spirit of Mr. Lodbrok's theme.
Objection! You eliminated Mr. Furukawa just like that? On a gut check? Had you watched Mr. Rainville's masterpiece Final Fantasy XVI Music Analysis Part 1 video, you would know Mr. Ryo Furukawa is the unsung mountain from which the score's highest peaks are met. You want bravado? Listen to the blistering, menacing precision of the strings and brass harmonies in The Riddle. You want swagger? Rock and roll? Have you heard f***ing Ascension? You think Ryo Furukawa doesn't have the guts to write Mr. Lodbrok's theme just because he sticks to classical orchestration? Besides, Furukawa's name is all over The First Soldier, Rebirth, and Ever Crisis.
Hold it! I never said he couldn't, but why would they hire someone so specialized in rousing, hyper-realistic virtual orchestral battle tracks to write a character theme? Besides, you're conflating his skill as an arranger with his compositional work. Those killer FF16 strings melodies were likely all the work of those tracks' composer, Mr. Masayoshi Soken, not its arranger, Mr. Furukawa. Had Mr. Soken been a suspect, well, that would be a different story. There's no doubt he's got the swagger, bravado, and rock and roll spirit needed to write Mr. Lodbrok's theme. But that's neither here nor there. My next two suspects, Mr. Reo Uratani and Mr. Tadayoshi Makino, came much closer to fitting the description thanks to their extensive use of the electric guitar. But Mr. Uratani's melody lines and arrangement choices were still a touch too delicate. There's a fragility and vulnerability to his work that's completely absent in Mr. Lodbrok's theme. For Mr. Makino, we have the opposite problem. There is a subtle, dark, and often fiery intensity to his own compositions and arrangements that feel too contemplative and moody for Mr. Lodbrok's devil-may-care attitude.
Objection! You're eliminating these two men because their guitar-heavy tracks are, what, too moody and or not moody enough? What are you even saying? For the majority of their careers, these two men worked at Capcom, of all places. Capcom is the home of swagger, of bravado, of Street Fighter, Marvel, and literal Devil May Cry. As Mr. Rainville rightfully pointed out, Colonel Lodbrok's theme could have been lifted right out of any of those series.
Hold it! Capcom is the house of cool, yes, but Mr. Makino and Mr. Uratani never worked on any of those series you just mentioned. Their work at the company was exclusively limited to more capital F fantasy-inspired series like Monster Hunter and Dragon's Dogma. In those two series, Mr. Lodbrok's theme would stick out like a sore thumb.
Objection! Take that! Ah, but that's where you're wrong, Inspector. Mr. Tadayoshi Makino contributed to a hard rock / heavy metal arrangement album of Devil May Cry music. Checkmate, motherfucker!
Did he compose any of the tracks?
No.
Did he work on the arrangements?
No.
Well, what did he do?
He played guitar and bass on a couple tracks. Okay, maybe that wasn't as strong a piece of evidence as I thought. Carry on.
Next up was Mr. Shingo Karaoka, though I could tell from a mile away he wasn't the composer, thanks to his dizzyingly eclectic arrangement styles. Call the man up if you want a jazzy, hungover version of Johnny's theme, or a ragtime riff on Kate Sith's theme, or the Peruvian pan flutes, banjo, and trumpets of Gongaga Village. Otherwise, you'd just be wasting everyone's time getting him to arrange something as earnestly straightforward and rock and roll as Mr. Lodbrok's theme. That left me with three suspects. Mr. Masaya Tsunemoto's PSP-era composition sounded nothing like Mr. Lodbrok's theme, but his Rebirth-era arrangements of Mr. Uematsu tracks scratched a faintly familiar itch. It wasn't exactly Lodbrok-esque, but he did dabble in the occasional use of the electric guitar. More crucially, he was the only suspect listed in the composer's section of the Rebirth credits without a known Rebirth composition to his name. Meaning somewhere in Rebirth, there is a track composed, or at least co-composed, by Mr. Tsunemoto that didn't make it onto the Rebirth original soundtrack.
Well, there it is then. You found our man.
Hold it! Not so fast. While this fact is indeed disconcerting, it can't be denied that none of Mr. Tsunemoto's past compositions that I found sound anything like Mr. Lodbrok's theme. Much more likely, Mr. Tsunemoto's mystery composition has to do with one of Rebirth's many minigame tracks. That, or, considering his history with spooky titles such as Ghost and Goblins and Tim Burton's The Nightmare Before Christmas, it could be he was involved with a track used in or around the haunted hotel in the Gold Saucer. Moving on, my next suspect was a late addition, Mr. Hibiki Yamazaki. This one felt like the mother lode at first. In both the Ever Crisis and Rebirth credits, his name appears in a particularly prominent and unique section. Original music composed by Hibiki Yamazaki. The way his name was highlighted felt significant, in the same way that Mr. Lodbrok's inclusion in the story of Rebirth felt unique and significant.
Objection! Had you taken the time to read the comments section of Mr. Rainville's Final Fantasy VII Rebirth Music Analysis Part 18 video, you would have seen a few top-tier sleuths point out that at least one of Mr. Yamazaki's The First Soldier compositions, Egg Hunter, shows up in Rebirth as part of a Chapter 12 photography side quest.
Precisely. And not only that, the all-knowing user FF7 Music pointed out that a few of Mr. Yamazaki's The First Soldier compositions also show up in Ever Crisis, hence his name showing up in both games.
Hold it! Then why give the guy a Nobuo Uematsu tier special treatment within both Ever Crisis and Rebirth's credits? Such prominent placement for what? A couple novelty tracks buried inside side quests?
The answer can be found by analyzing the name listed right next to his. Mr. Yamazaki shares this original music credit with Mr. Takeharu Ishimoto. What do these two have in common? Both men have their music featured in Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, even though neither of them worked on Final Fantasy VII Rebirth.
Objection! But that's no different from Mr. Daiki Ishikawa. Rewind the tape.
His omission from the Rebirth credits can be chalked up to an internal decision not to credit musicians who didn't contribute anything new to Rebirth.
Inspector, you're beginning to trip over your web of lies.
Hold it! The strange loophole around not crediting Mr. Daiki Ishikawa and Mr. Takafumi Imamura appears to apply just to music written for Final Fantasy VII Remake. And considering Rebirth is largely made up of the same development team who made Remake, I could see how whoever is in charge with putting together the game's credits might be able to play a bit more fast and loose with crediting their internal work, for which they likely have free reins to use as they please, versus flagging the right permissions for music written under different development conditions, with potentially different contracts and rights. The First Soldier and Crisis Core are both Final Fantasy VII Universe titles, but they do not share the inseparable, symbiotic relationship that Remake and Rebirth have. I'm sure the same is true in other departments. There are likely Remake-era art assets reused in Rebirth made by folks whose names aren't in the Rebirth credits if they left the company or didn't work on Rebirth directly.
I see your point, Inspector. Yes, that is quite possible. But still, you are merely speculating. You don't know for sure the internal logic and logistics of putting together Rebirth's massive credits.
True, I could be completely off base, but even if I'm wrong, you need only your ears to know that Mr. Yamazaki is too green to have been tasked with composing the theme song of Mr. Lodbrok. It's too important a role, and none of his compositions sound anything like it. No, Mr. Yamazaki is too pure. And so that left me with one suspect. From the rousing energy of his ace combat compositions, to the freewheeling and funky spirit of Rebirth's Prison Break, there is more than just a passing similarity between Mr. Lodbrok's theme and the collective compositional and arrangement works of one Mr. Keiki Kobayashi.
Corroboration! I agree. And not only that, I've got another smoking gun for you. If I can quote Mr. Rainville describing Colonel Lodbrok's theme.
From an arrangement and energy standpoint, it feels like a character theme for a fighting game character. If Ken Masters didn't already have his own iconic theme, I think this one would fit perfectly. And like a great Street Fighter theme, it perfectly toes the line between really aggressive and in-your-face, while still being warm and melodically sound.
Mr. Rainville's masterful analysis never misses. The Colonel's theme does sound like a Street Fighter track. This should be of no surprise then, since Mr. Keiki Kobayashi has written plenty of Street Fighter music.
What?
For Capcom's Street Fighter V, Mr. Kobayashi composed dozens of tracks, and not just catchy environment themes, but also highly melodic, highly bombastic, bravado-rich character themes, such as Falks, Bangs, Kareens, and Nakalis.
The man can do swagger, he can do funk, melodic and harmonic brilliance, big guitars, big synths, big drums. He can do it all. Even without the Street Fighter epiphany, there was already enough to paint a clear picture. But now, all signs point to the composer of Glenn Lodbrok's theme being Mr. Keiki Kobayashi. Good. Very good. I knew I could count on you to get the job done. Congratulations on nabbing the perpetrator, Inspector RK. Oh, but I didn't say it was Mr. Kobayashi. What was that? All I said was that this mountain of overwhelming evidence certainly points to Mr. Keiki Kobayashi being the composer, but I never actually said it was him who did it.
Boss? What are you implying?
Tell me, did you think I wouldn't notice? Your little friend here has been guiding me toward Mr. Kobayashi ever since I met him. Not to mention your little goons stalking my office. Or what about those hazy Street Fighter and Capcom memories I keep reliving? That's right, I know what those are. Implanted artificial memories. It was you who slipped those subliminal signs into the bozo YouTubers' videos, wasn't it?
Final Fantasy VII Extended Universe themes, and I thought I would quickly rank them. Just real quick. People who appreciate the minutia of this Rebirth series should find a lot to chew on in my Bloodborne video, even if you haven't played a minute of that game. There's a link to my Patreon in the video description as well. Look at you tumbling onto that link! You're such a klutz! Not just because they both used to work at Capcom, scoring several Monster Hunter games together. The Capcom Square Enix connections are pretty interesting. It's time for the first half of the Midgar Mysteries finale. Yeah, I had to cut this one in half as well, sorry.
You tried setting up this perfect little breadcrumb trail for me, didn't you? You were guiding me right toward the logical conclusion that it had to be Mr. Keiki Kobayashi, weren't you? Well, what's the matter? Coral got your tongue? Moments ago you seemed all too excited to wrap this whole mystery up, and with nary a single piece of concrete proof. Unless... that's it.
What?
Of course, this whole time.
What are you talking about?
You're not Mr. Lodbrok, are you?
This is ridiculous. Take him out.
Yes, boss.
The man pulls out a katana and lunges towards me.
Hey-ya!
I roll out of the way at the last minute, while staying close enough for the blade to connect and slice through the rope that had been tying my hands together. I quickly reach into my back pocket and retrieve from it my most cherished possession. Then I quickly toss it on the ground in front of the scientist. Is that an ultra-rare holographic picture of Tifa Sherlockhart in her Bunny Bustier seasonal outfit from the hit gacha game Final Fantasy VII Ever Crisis, signed by both her English and Japanese voice actors?
What? Where?
The scientist dives for the card. I take the opportunity to rush him. A swift strike to his left wrist allows me to disarm him of his blade.
Wait a minute. This isn't Tifa.
Whoops, my mistake. I keep the Tifa card in my other pocket. My arms no longer shackled and with a blade in hand. Now I was the one in charge. I turned my attention away from the sobbing scientist, back towards the hooded man. You were never Mr. Lodbrok, were you? This whole time. You were... that bozo YouTuber Patrick Rainville.
Congratulations, Inspector. You got me.
But why? Why go through all of this? I mean, hiding Street Fighter music inside a series of videos about Final Fantasy VII? Have you no shame?
Shame? The only shame I see is that you have failed to solve the case of Glenn's missing composer, and I'm afraid you have run out of time. There's a storm coming, Inspector. The helicopter that brought you here has been circling the island, awaiting my signal. I was hoping we would be able to return together, but alas, it seems you will have to be left behind. Swallowed by the storm, I'm afraid, along with the last of Rador Archipelago's lingering secrets. Believe me, Inspector, I don't look forward to informing my viewers that you failed at your task. Yet here we are, and you have understood nothing.
I could see the distant helicopter approaching. I needed to wrap this up ASAP. Oh, but I'm understanding plenty, Mr. Rainville. It was never about Mr. Kobayashi, Mr. Yamazaki, or any of the ex-Capcom cohorts, was it? This whole time, It was all about pinning the blame on someone other than the real composer. You went through all this so that the real culprit could walk away scot-free.
What did you say?
See, you do know who the real composer is. You've just been trying to hide their identity, not just from me, but from your viewers too.
Don't be ridiculous.
But the answer was right there, all this time, hiding in plain sight. Yet your silly Capcom misdirections threw me off the trail. It threw us all off the trail. Well played. But I'm afraid playtime's over.
Inspector, what are you getting at?
Sure, you were tossing baseless Street Fighter and Capcom red herrings left, right, and center, but did you even realize that ever since the very beginning of your damn Rebirth music analysis series, you've been guiding us towards the truth?
If you close your eyes and think about your favorite tracks from Remake, there is a statistically large chance that you're thinking of something arranged and co-composed by Shotaro Shima. Shotaro Shima is a truly magnificent arranger. But because Shotaro Shima is just so next level, but that's just how it goes when Shotaro Shima's at the wheel. But I'm sure we'll find out whenever the Final Fantasy VII Rebirth Plus soundtrack comes out, a year or two from now. Besides, it's probably Shima again. This track is uncredited, but if I can hazard another guess, I'll say this one is Shima as well. The choices and tones of instruments used in both the field and battle arrangements lead me to believe this is a Shima original. To my biased ears, this sounds quite clearly like not just a Shotaro Shima arrangement, but also a Shima composition. Incredible work. This is Shima at the very top of his game. This track sounds more obviously like a Shima one to me. This is pretty clearly a playful Shotaro Shima arrangement. The main melody line here is excellent, and I would almost call it Shima's best if it wasn't for another track coming up in this very episode. My favorite Final Fantasy VII Rebirth track.
What? Impossible. It couldn't be him. Oh, but couldn't it? Besides, it was you, Mr. Rainville, who showed me the answer. You left me all the evidence I could ever need. You were just too blind in your own devotion to see the answer staring you right in the face. After all, you always were his biggest fan.
What are you saying?
Take that! Evidence number 1. That fortune you received back in Final Fantasy VII Rebirth Music Analysis Part 10, it spelled it out for you.
Grave misfortune.
You just didn't know how to properly decipher it, so you tossed it away, only for it to end up back at the gold saucer and finally in the hands of a true professional such as myself. And that strange riddle? If you'd spent more time studying Japanese and less time making pedantic YouTube videos, you'd have understood its secret message right away. An island left within your wake calls back to you for your own sake. A soaring tune that's full and clear. Before it starts to disappear, have you perhaps made some mistake? Now your Japanese reading audience members know the truth, and soon so too will the rest of them.
This is absolute nonsense. That fortune was nothing more than a Square Enix cash grab. Just release the Rebirth Plus soundtrack already.
I agree. Release the goddamn Plus soundtrack, Squaresoft.
But regardless, divining a name from a cryptic message has nothing to do with who composed Glenn's theme. You're losing it, old man.
Take that! Evidence number 2. Tell me, what is your absolute favorite synth tone?
My what? I don't have to tell you anything.
Oh, but you already have. Several times, in fact.
I want you to pay attention to the timbre of the synth on those last 3 notes of the Lifestream melody. It's a little warbly and has a nice cushioning of reverb around it, right? We're going to hear that specific synth tone many times in Rebirth, and the reason I'm bringing it up is because I found it to be a good way to guess as to who the arranger is on several uncredited tracks. But know that when you hear that synth tone, you're probably listening to a Shotaro Shima track. Here it is again, used to great effect. You'll hear this specific synth tone throughout Rebirth, but the first place I heard it was during the flopped Battle Royale game Final Fantasy VII The First Soldier. I know this isn't a big piece of trivia or anything, but whenever I hear that tone in Rebirth, I always think back to The First Soldier. There's no deeper meaning to it, I just think it sounds good. The arrangement fleshes out some more with an electric guitar and another brief cameo from my favorite synth tone. My favorite synth shows up once more, so unsurprisingly, this is probably Shima again.
Fine. Yeah. I like the sound of that synth he uses. So what?
I can think of another place where one of his synths shows up.
Objection!
That's not the Shima synth at all. It's some sort of synth bell, sure, but it's missing the shivering warble texture found in the Shima synth. But I didn't say it was the Shima synth. I said it was a Shima synth.
What?
Compare the synth bells in Mr. Lodbrok's theme to the ones featured in the track you are currently hearing. This is Soldier Candidate from the Battle Royale shooter Final Fantasy VII The First Soldier. Those are the exact same synth bells as in Mr. Lodbrok's theme.
Impossible.
Oh, but it shouldn't be a surprise to you, Mr. Rainville. You did in fact open part 18 of your silly Rebirth series with this exact track.
Hi there. Welcome to my series analyzing every piece of music from the comically large soundtrack to Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. Hi there. Welcome back to my series combing through every piece of music in Final Fantasy VII Rebirth.
If that's not hubris, what is?
Hubris? It's purely coincidental. I just happened to enjoy that track and thought it fit well with the video's intro.
Oh, I'm sure you did enjoy that track. Once a fanboy, always a fanboy. Oh, and are you noticing this funky rhythm guitar? The bass? The swagger? The bravado?
The bravado. The bravado.
The bravado. Funny, your sniveling scientist here was leading me to believe only Mr. Keiki Kobayashi was capable of something so funky. Yet here we are. All right. Your conjecture and speculation is beginning to tire me, Inspector. Your so-called evidence lacks any concrete proof of what you are implying.
Hold it!
Proof, you say? Well, if it's proof you want.
Take that!
And now for my final piece of evidence. The 18-minute, 19-second mark of Final Fantasy VII Rebirth Music Analysis, Episode 17.
I'm sure there are all sorts of secrets hidden inside Suzuki's most unassuming tracks, but to me this one here seems...
Yeah? What of it? It's a salient observation. There are many secrets hidden inside Mr. Yoshitaka Suzuki's most unassuming tracks. I have something of a special talent, Mr. Rainville. I'm able to recall back with photographic precision any memory I have witnessed. I call this complex cataloging system the Systematic Tagging of Memories Protocol, or STAMP for short. Right before your goons captured me at the internet cafe, I was deep in the weeds of said memory recall when your seemingly inconsequential comment about the secrets hiding in Mr. Yoshitaka Suzuki's tracks came to mind. That comment triggered two additional memories, both of which stopped me in my tracks. The first involved the scene of Miss Tifa Sherlockhart in a bathing suit in Costa del Sol in Chapter 6. The other involved Colonel Lodbrok's televised insurrection speech in Chapter 11.
What could Tifa in a bathing suit possibly have to do with any of this?
Nothing. That's just a memory I tend to default to. Perhaps a defect in the systematic tagging of memories protocol.
Please, Inspector, get to the point.
The other scene, however, involves Colonel Lodbrok's near incitement of war in his broadcast to the various members of the Shinra Resistance Committee. A somber, unassuming track plays during this cutscene. If it feels familiar to you, it's because it shares quite a few similarities with the music featured in the Chapter 4 scene involving Rufus Shinra and Colonel Lodbrok, which you went over in Part 16 of your music analysis series. Glenn's theme shows up during this cutscene with him and President Shinra 2.0, although you'd be forgiven for not noticing it, since it's been completely transformed. Yoshitaka Suzuki mostly retains the gloomy mood of the Shinra half of the track, while adding a bit more percussive momentum. Afterward, a piano comes in, playing the main verse line from Glenn's theme. In both cases, we are dealing with very dark, brooding Yoshitaka Suzuki arrangements. Similarly, just like the Chapter 4 track, this one too features various nods to Mr. Lodbrok's original Ever Crisis theme. They're certainly more subtle this time around, but you can still make out a few familiar motifs. Interestingly, since Rufus Shinra isn't present in this scene, there are no pre-existing leitmotifs by Mr. Uematsu. This track is entirely an arrangement of Mr. Lodbrok's theme, meaning that, naturally, whoever composed this track composed Mr. Lodbrok's theme. Yes, that's how credits work, Inspector. There's also an additional cutscene at the very end of the game involving Glenn that plays an additional arrangement of his theme. Yeah, what of it? Unlike those other tracks involving Mr. Lodbrok, this one here is quite special. This is the only one that has an official track name: Shinra Resistance Committee. And the reason we know its name is because it's the only track involving Mr. Lodbrok that made it onto the Final Fantasy VII Rebirth original soundtrack. Meaning, if we look at the liner notes included with the soundtrack, we'll have our answer. Mr. Rainville, are you ready to confess?
I have nothing more to say on this subject.
Oh, but you've already said all there is to say. Don't you remember? All the way back in Final Fantasy VII Rebirth Music Analysis Part 3. Specifically, at the 03-25 mark of the episode.
But yeah, it's Shotaro Shima. When in doubt, always bet on Shima.
This is impossible. Mr. Rainville, it is time to wrap this case up once and for all.
No, please.
Colonel Glenn Lodbrok's theme was composed by none other than...
Don't say it.
Mr. Shotaro Shima.
No. I just wanted to make Shima-san proud. When I contacted you to solve this mystery, I hadn't even considered it could be Shima. How could it be? I love Shima. If it was him, I would have picked up on it right away. But then as time went on, and you continued your investigation, it started dawning on me. What if it was Shima? And not just that, What would it say about me, Shima's self-proclaimed biggest fan, if I couldn't figure out it was a Shima track myself, and that I had to get an old, washed-up investigator to figure it out for me? I'd failed at following my own adage, tattooed onto my arm since the age of 12. When in doubt, always bet on Shima. That's when I became paranoid that it could be Shima. I sent some folks to keep an eye on you. All the while, I was searching for the answer myself. I even considered writing to Shima directly, just straight up asking him, "Did you write Glenn's theme?" But I couldn't do it. I was too scared that if he told me the truth, he would forever be disappointed that I hadn't figured it out for myself. So if I couldn't figure it out on my own, I sure as hell wasn't about to let you take all the fame and glory, to have you be the one in Shima's good books. So I did what I could to sabotage your investigation. That's when I started to frame things around Kobayashi being the perpetrator. I knew you hate-watched my series, so I started subliminally peppering his Street Fighter tracks within my episodes. I really thought I had you wrapped around my finger, but then you figured it out. The answer was there all along. Shotaro Shima wrote Glenn's theme.
The waves were crashing on the beach. Mr. Rainville's helicopter was hovering nearby.
Boss, the storm's about to blow. We need to get out of here now. No, none of it matters. My reputation is ruined.
I realized if I wanted to get out of this alive, I needed to butter the man up immediately. Hey now, that's not true. Mr. Shima might have composed the track, but you were bang on the money about it sounding like a Mr. Kobayashi arrangement. Maybe Mr. Shima composed the track and Mr. Kobayashi arranged the Ever Crisis version.
You think so? Really?
There wasn't a chance in hell, but I knew what he needed to hear. Sure, anything's possible. I toss away the blade and then reach my hand towards the man. Why don't we say we solve this mystery together?
Yeah, I can get behind that. We solved it. Together.
And so ends the case of the missing composer. Had I known this would take me 5 episodes to solve, I might have asked my client, Mr. Rainville, for double the pay. As for me, it's time for a long vacation. I'm thinking an extended holiday in Costa del Sol is just what the doctor ordered. Who knows, maybe my sweetheart Tifa Sherlock heart might swing by. If this case has taught me anything, it's that anything's possible. Yeah, I'm putting up my hat for now, but if you come across another tantalizing mystery like this one, give me a call. Oh, that's right. I don't think I ever gave you my business card. Here, you can keep it. But until that next mystery comes calling, this is Inspector RK signing off. Take care.